Hey there, friends. Several of you have sent me an email talking about the 1,000% tax that the Democrats want to levy on all honest, law-abiding gun owners whenever they purchase a firearm. I've been a little bit hesitant about putting something out on this simply because I don't have the full details of it. You'll remember that the Democrats put a similar measure in place, or at least attempted to, last summer, and it failed miserably. The wording of this one has not come out yet. The news of the fact that they want to push this through again has come out, but the actual wording of the bill that they are proposing has not come out. More than 24 House Democrats put forward legislation Friday that would slap assault weapons, quote unquote, and quote unquote high capacity magazines with a 1,000% excise tax, a change that would raise the price of a $500 weapon to $5,000 in a bid to reduce access to guns across the country. Real quick, makes you wonder who they're trying to reduce access to guns for, right? Because we know who's not going to pay this tax. More on that later. Representative Don Beyer of Virginia and 24 other House Democrats introduced the legislation Friday. It's the second time Democrats have put forward this idea. Now, a couple of obvious things. Again, going back to the $500, if you want to buy a $500 Glock under their plan, you would have to spend $5,000 on it. Now, at this point, I don't recall where that money would go, but obviously it has to go somewhere. Again, more on that later as well. But if you want to, let's just up the ante a little bit. Spend $1,500 on a beautiful CMMG rifle. Well, you're going to spend $15,000 on it instead under their plan. Now, some people may argue that Obamacare was a similar thing. If you remember, Obamacare went to the Supreme Court. Roberts, with his act of betrayal, came out and said that this was a tax, not a penalty, or whichever, however he worded it, and that it was legal. If it's considered a tax, that's how it passed. Obamacare was able to pass scrutiny as far as Supreme Court goes. Them trying to use that same wording, that it's a tax and not a penalty, is why they're trying to get this through. However, they fail to realize that health care is not a constitutionally protected right. The Second Amendment is constitutionally protected. So a lot of different things will apply to this unconstitutional law than what might have or might not have applied during Obamacare. And let's look at who this affects, right? Think about this, and I want you to think logically about this. Don't think like the wackos on the far left do with emotion. I want you to think clearly on this. Hear what I'm saying and know that this is how this applies. We've often said they just want to disarm us, not the criminals. The criminals are their people. They want us disarmed. They want us to not have firearms. This is proof of that. Because if you are putting a universal tax out there on the sale of a firearm, who does that not apply to? When I go to the store, a legitimate FFL, to purchase a firearm, that 1,000% tax would apply to me. But old Gary down the road, who's buying his stolen guns out of the trunks of cars in downtown Chicago, how does that affect him? Does he even know it's a law? Because it'll never apply to him. So who are they really trying to disarm? They clearly are making no additional efforts to focus on the actual crime. Where the crime is happening, again, it's in your urban areas, it's in your downtown areas. Let's face it, that's where your mass shootings are taking place. They're not aiming one new law at trying to control their people who are killing all these people out there. Yet they try to put up and pass laws that are only going to affect people outside of the people that they're trying to protect, us. We are literally the only people who 1,000% tax on ammo and standard capacity magazines and firearms would affect. We're literally the only people. None of those other people committing all of these mass shootings would ever be affected by any of this. They steal everything. Now, all of this is happening at the same time, if you'll remember this report that came out last week, that the Democrats are pressing Kevin McCarthy for a vote on gun reform as soon as possible, they say. More than 100 Democrats are calling on Speaker McCarthy to schedule votes on gun violence, quote unquote, prevention legislation, the latest push by members of the minority party to spark action on gun reform. In a letter to McCarthy on Thursday, the Democrats, all members of the Gun Violence Protection Task Force, what a cute little stupid name, led by Representative Mike Thompson of California, asked McCarthy to bring firearm-related measures to the floor, quote, as soon as possible. So this is clearly a concerted effort. It's obviously an effort to push through unconstitutional gun legislation, if you want to call it that, and at the same time they're timing all of this to try to get the attention of McCarthy. And McCarthy is no friend of the Second Amendment. I could see McCarthy caving in a case like this. McCarthy has not shown any legitimate protection of the Second Amendment. So I don't see this being a futile effort by the Democrats. I believe they could get Kevin McCarthy's attention. And because they're mounting this effort all at the same time, let's see when the next mass shooting takes place. And I'm talking about a legitimate one, not people who are arguing and slinging dope in the urban areas or trailer parks of America. I'm talking about an actual sociopath who goes on a shooting rampage to try to indiscriminately kill as many people as they can. Is that going to happen like real soon? Because they're mounting their effort pretty soon, and we know that coincidental nature of these, quote, mass shootings. They all seem to happen when there's some kind of a push for a new gun control legislation or bill or something like that to get pushed through. I'd also like to remind you guys, note the timing of all of this. The timing is never suspicious. It's not a coincidence. What do we have coming up literally right now? In other words, what is going to allow most people to take their eye off of the prize, take their eye off of the ball? You know what it is. Going back to school. It's a lot of pressure on a family, especially in this horrible inflation economy that we have. It's very stressful. So people are going to be focusing on other ways to maybe shop a little bit harder to get those supplies to go back to school. Football season, whether you like it or not, is massive in this country. Huge distraction. You got to figure from the tailgating and during the week, going into the weekend, and of course going all the way through Monday. Now football's on almost every single day of the week. Major distraction right there. Also, holidays. We are going to be rolling into the holidays. Heavier part of the holidays where people are getting together. And again, a lot less focus on politics. So between going back to school, football season, and the holidays, a lot of people will not be looking at headlines regarding politics. So it's an easy time for Democrats to go in there and try to slide some of this legislation through. And don't think for a minute that some kind of coward like Kevin McCarthy might also see this as his opportunity to provide cover for himself while people are distracted to allow some kind of additional gun control to be pushed through. Make no mistake though, folks, none of this is about gun safety. None of it is. Not one bit of legislation that any of these people have tried to present has got any kind of legislation built into it that provides any sort of gun safety. Not one bit. It's all about banning things and making things less available to people regarding their Second Amendment rights. And again, it's not going to affect one single criminal out there. It's just you and I. That's who they're trying to disarm.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.